Today we're joined by Etie Hertz. Today is absolutely an exciting moment for me because we're talking with someone who has loads of experience with real human conversations. Etie is currently the GM of Conversation Intelligence at ContentSquare, and we're going to really be just diving into this experience and ability to track, understand what works well in real human conversations and see how we can transform those learnings into the digital world, where we are here at Raza trying to automate conversations between humans and machines. Thank you so much for joining us, Etie. Glad to have you on our podcast today. I'd really love to kick off with a little bit of maybe an elevator pitch for ContentSquare, especially since we're sitting here with the head of general intelligence of conversation. I'd love to learn more about ContentSquare, what you do, and really, why is your product awesome?
Awesome, thanks for having me. So ContentSquare is a leader in product analytics and digital experience. Our mission is to help brands improve conversion, retention, and customer journeys by understanding how their users truly experience their digital environments. So as technology and consumer behavior is evolving, we've sought out additional ways to understand engagement and on conversational channels specifically. And that was actually why ContentSquare acquired our company, Goerz, about 6 months ago. Conversations are kind of the next iteration of what's happening online. And at Goerz, we spent about 6 years building AI-powered customer intelligence products. And like ContentSquare, we're very, very focused on customer interactions. So Goerz helps brands understand sentiment, emotion, and friction within support tickets, chat, and voice conversations. So bringing together the digital experience and the conversational experience makes total sense considering where the world is going, where conversations are becoming the new UI that people are accustomed to.
Definitely heard that chat is kind of the new app or something like that. That's something that's been going around at least in my circles here in the kind of broader agentic AI world. I'm curious to know a little bit, especially as you talk about going deep into the sentiment, the understanding of conversations. Tell me a little bit, what problem were you seeing in customer service, and how did you start to come about experiencing these problems yourself before you decided, okay, I've got to solve this problem?
So the moment in time when we started at Goerz, there was a huge shift in the market from people speaking to customers via voice channels and increasingly through digital channels like chat, SMS, email, and messaging. So we analyzed hundreds of millions of conversations, and we worked with some of the best universities in the world to develop a system of models that would allow us to understand how conversations were going, initially in the digital form. So our initial use case was real-time agent assist. It would sit on an agent's desktop and would guide them in real time throughout a conversation. So you have to imagine these agents, typically they went from voice, most of them were not in the US. They're all over, they're Asia, South America, Central America, and they worked a lot on improving their accent. Suddenly they were tasked with chatting with 3 conversations at the same time in English. Very, very difficult. So we really improved their lives. We made it easier and more seamless for them to interact. We boosted basically everything about their job, and we delivered very high impact and positive conversations. Our models became so powerful that our clients started asking us to actually QA the conversations. QA is a huge business in customer support. How are agents doing? How are conversations going? And our models were able to do that really effectively. We initially did that for humans. We then evolved to also do that for AI agents and chatbots. And then finally, we have an insights platform, essentially, which is available for the head of CX or other C-suite folks who want to understand what's happening in the customer conversations and what useful information they can derive from that to improve LTV, essentially.
Okay, now let's break that down, LTV, because we've got a lot of acronyms that come through, probably your space and mine as well. What's LTV? Why does it matter?
So LTV is lifetime value of a customer. So there's every ingredient goes into that metric, essentially. What are people spending? What are your customers spending with you? How often are they spending it? Are they increasing their spend? Are you upselling them? And on the flip side, are you churning them? Support historically has been kind of seen as a cost center and a way to mitigate churn. But the more forward-thinking brands actually use it to boost LTV. When someone has a great interaction with a support agent, they're more likely to spend more money and be a lifelong or a longer tenured customer. So that's a really important investment, but understanding the impact of those interactions with your customers is very, very difficult, but incredibly valuable. And so you'll see that, I would say 5 years ago, only like the best companies were doing it. And today I think it's table stakes. Everyone's gonna have to do it to survive.
Okay, so when we think about tracking LTV, I guess one of the things that is challenging, at least as I know in the kind of agentic AI, conversational AI space, is actually measuring the quality of a conversation. And I know, especially as we were talking earlier about kind of the conversation being under leveraged growth lever ultimately for these businesses. Ultimately, when you look at the quality of a conversation, how does that directly impact LTV? Is it just, can we just point to broad customer experience? Wow, that was better. Or is there actually like key components that you can break down from your analysis that shows, this component absolutely affects LTV over time?
So first, I guess we should talk about quality. Historically, the way people measured quality is usually through something like CSAT surveys, which have a 10% response rate. You get 15% if you're lucky. It's super biased. And so the first model that we created was a very robust sentiment model that tracks not just every conversation, but every back and forth within a conversation between an agent and a customer. So it's very, very granular, tried and tested throughout the world, and it's very, very useful. We found it be so powerful that some enormous brands are able to use our sentiment model to predict churn, likelihood of churn. So there's a lot of things within our sentiment model. Not only how did the conversation go throughout, did someone come in upset, did they leave happy, but how many back and forths were there, did the sentiment change, was the sentiment targeted towards the support agent, or was it about a broader policy or product issue that the company has? Oftentimes CS will say, we've done our job, we had a great conversation. They're not happy with the 14-day return policy. I can't change that. So those nuances are really impactful, and you're able to parse them out and do very, very meaningful things. So as I mentioned, one of the world-leading brands was able to use this to predict whether a customer would come back and buy more from them just based on our sentiment model alone. We have other markers within the conversation that we're tracking quality. We group conversations in terms of like what questions are being asked, what are the root causes. We have conversation markers throughout. There are a lot of different things that we enable for folks to better understand the quality. Now, once you have that, if you want to use that to derive LTV, you can run regressions and you can see if some of these things are correlated to repurchase orders or cancellations. The big unlock here is combining Loris with ContentSquare. You're going to have the front end analytics, and you're going to understand what people are doing on the websites and in the app, coupled with the subjective, very qualitative data about how people are feeling as they go through these journeys. And once you start to try to correlate those activities, it's going to be much more highly correlated to LTV than anyone's been able to do historically.
Now, I'd love to double click on sentiment as a metric, because I think that's something within agentic AI, we're kind of in the baby steps of working well with contact centers. I would say we've got often a load of developers or, let's say business folks that are suddenly tasked with, building this conversational interface, and then suddenly find themselves working with a load of contact center people. It's not always the case. Sometimes these teams evolve from the contact center, but oftentimes it's the case where, you're learning CSAT basics. I think CSAT is one of the most common that I see in agentic AI conversational interfaces. I'm curious though, when we talk about measuring sentiment, what does that measurement actually look like? Is it really just a benchmark against yourself, or is there some kind of quantifiable method of measuring sentiment?
So sentiment itself, we ascribe a 5-point scale to every interaction, from a -2 to a +2. And what we're trying to do is mimic if two humans looked at the same conversation and had to score it, would they come up with the same score? That's essentially what our models are doing. Then we feed that sentiment and that journey of a conversation into a metric we call conversational quality, or CQ. And that should be a proxy for what you would get in a CSAT survey scenario. So if you go back to CSAT, if you tell me how you survey, I'll basically tell you what your CSAT's going to be. If you wait 90 days to send it to somebody versus if you send it 5 minutes after the interaction. If you send it with a picture of your dog next to your face when you send the survey out, you're going to get a higher score. You can manipulate CSAT in a lot of different ways. And so being able to track, using our models to automatically track every single interaction live, that's going to be probably a more accurate metric that you can do different things with. CSAT, for better or worse, is used by a lot of folks for promotions and things like that. It's not going away anytime soon, even though it's, as I mentioned, it's pretty biased.
No, I see the same in conversational AI teams broadly, because what'll happen is we'll often issue the CSAT at the end of the conversation. And so what happens is a lot of people abandon before that point. So all the bad experiences don't get captured because these people just leave, and they're either not logged in, we have no way to contact them. So we're really only measuring people that get to a point where we might have the chance to ask a CSAT. So I think that's something, I think it'll change as we as a kind of function space become more advanced in terms of like things we can do in the contact center. Do we know who it is? Do we have a unique user ID? Can we contact them later? But right now, it's a big black hole, I would say, at least for conversational agents. How do you solve that, or how have you seen teams solve that from the conversational AI perspective? Because I think that is a gap. I guess sentiment maybe is the solution.
Yeah, sentiment, and like you want to get as close to the interaction as possible. And the beautiful thing about analyzing 100% of your interactions, you're getting 10x what you would typically get in a CSAT scenario. So it's a much more robust platform and a much more robust way to understand how folks are feeling. We haven't spoken about, but one of the things we do incredibly well is we build large clients in contact driver models. So we're essentially very accurate at understanding why people are contacting you, what the root cause of those interactions are. And then when you layer on sentiment on top of that, you can start to find incredible insights. So when people contact you about a certain product or about a competitor, how are they feeling about those things versus when they're calling about your product or they're calling about your service? There's a tremendous amount of insight you can derive once you start to layer these models together.
And is this then connected all up into kind of a user's unique user profile, ultimately, somewhere saved? Where does all this information live in reality?
So we're very strict with security and PII, so we redact everything. We have no personally identifiable information. Now, in the future, there is a way to connect this back to the conversion side of the house and use hashes or different proxies to figure out that this person that Lauren or 123 came in and had this kind of experience with respect to this product. That's kind of where this is going in terms of like personalization and being able to deliver specific services and solutions to specific users.
Okay. No, makes sense. I think that's also something we're early days, I would say, in terms of, especially when every single call for us runs through a language model and it's in real time, it often is getting sent to OpenAI, different language model providers. So that's definitely, I wouldn't say like a fully solved issue in our space, but I guess you have the benefit is that you're doing this after the fact in many cases in terms of this analysis piece. So the
analysis is post-interaction. We're using predominantly our own models.
Yeah.
We do leverage LLMs when it makes sense, but yeah.
No, makes sense. All right. Well, thank you so much. I think that piece about sentiment is my biggest takeaway from kind of this section in terms of like what could we do on the measurement side in conversational AI to make ourselves better and really understand our users better, because I think we've really only scratched the surface. So I'm really excited. It sounds like you've done this already with some conversational AI teams. So definitely a good reason to check out ContentSquare if you're looking at really diving into that sentiment, because I don't think there are many platforms out there that do a really, let's say even using proprietary models to really hone in and figure out the sentiment behind our users today. I would be really, really interested. This is the part I think I'm super interested to learn more about the actual things that you've learned from watching so many human conversations, from analyzing so many human conversations. We're currently in an interesting space because previously as conversation designers, as dialogue architects, we were very much blocked by our technology from delivering excellent experiences. So a lot of my job used to be working around the technology, and now it's flipping in the sense, when I go and build a conversational interface, I'm thinking, wow, I'm more thinking, how can I block it? How can I limit it? Which is a total 180 from what I used to be doing. I'd love to learn from your experiences. Now that we can have really natural conversations with machines, what have you learned from natural conversations with humans? What makes conversations better?
I guess initially when we rolled out our product, my most surprising takeaway at the beginning was just the impact you could get from a human meeting the other human on an emotional level. So people come in typically in support, they're upset. How do you match that tone? How do you make the customer understand that you actually care about them? So like people used to over apologize and be too empathetic in a sense, and that felt really inauthentic and fake, and people hated that. On the flip side, how do you make sure that you do meet them where they are so that you can start, before you even start to tackle the issue and what they're here to solve, they have to know that you're here trying, with their best interest at heart. So that comes naturally to some agents, and it does not come as naturally to others. Plus you have this constraint where oftentimes the agents have to handle several conversations at a time, so it's pretty hard to do that. Especially in like regulatory environments like fintech, there's so many things that they have to say or not say. They oftentimes forget the emotional side of it, and so even prompting them with certain things would help them remember, and would ultimately take them to a better place with the end user. So there's just a lot that you can gain from matching tone between humans. If you want to talk about with humans and bots, it's a whole different conversation, and it's much more complicated. I'd say with respect to like humans talking to bots, until a year ago, the experiences were pretty terrible. Most bots were rules-based. They couldn't do much, and they oftentimes tried to do more than they could do, and that would frustrate the human, so the human would find a way to match with a customer service agent. Then generative bots showed up about a year ago, and they're more interesting, they're better, they're higher potential, but oftentimes also brands are using them in use cases where the humans don't want to interact with that bot yet. So you can't really match tone with bot. Humans don't typically want to have a machine be that empathetic with them. Like sometimes it'll make sense, and maybe over time people will become more accustomed to it as they use Claude and ChatGPT at home as a consumer. Like maybe that will become more the norm. But I think that there's a big distinction between how a human agent interfaces with a consumer and an AI agent interfaces with a consumer. I can get like way deep into this. Like you don't want to. Right,
no, I would love to if you're up for it, because I think empathy is something we've been trying to build in for a long time. I would agree that there's like, but really the bare basics, right? If someone comes in and says, I've just an example I had once. I've had a death in the family. I can't pay my mortgage. I mean, pretty brutal, right? And that happens. These people come in and they start chatting to you about it. And really, it almost I think in the reflex reaction in the past has been kick it to a human. We don't want to touch that. We're not going to be able to deliver a good experience there. And that may well be the case for a while. I don't know the answer there, but I'd be curious. You talked about maybe apologizing too much, and that made it sound inauthentic or not empathetic. What does make an authentic, empathetic experience? Is it just something that is unique to the human delivering it, and it's something that we just either manifest or have or don't have, or can you teach it? Can you learn it?
For human-to-human interactions, there's like a pretty tried and true set of techniques you can use to kind of mirror the emotional state of the end user. There are a lot of different ways to do that, and that's been studied, and it's generally pretty reliable. With respect to how humans and AI agents are interacting, obviously this is brand new. It feels like we've been doing it forever, but it's only been a short amount of time. A lot of things are going to happen. I think as you, as a human, just increasingly talk to AI agents, you're going to become less formal, less emotional. You say thank you when you speak to a human. The more you interact with Claude or ChatGPT, you're not going to say thank you. You're just going to ask them for the thing. And that's going to probably permeate across society. You're going to not say thank you to other humans as much because most of your interactions are with AI agents. Like we're going to train ourselves almost to communicate more often with AI agents than humans. So it'll be kind of weird if you're talking really in a cold fashion to an AI agent, but that agent is empathetic and apologizing and say thank you. It's going to seem pretty strange, right? And you also have the uncanny valley issue. So there's a lot to learn about how people want to interact with AI agents. Some of them will want to speak to them like they speak to humans, but I suspect a lot of them are just going to want to get in and get out. It's, we had one of our clients was, I don't want to give away the client, but they would sell treats to animals, basically. And one of our data scientists one day was like analyzing a bunch of conversations, like millions of conversations, and he said, this is like a therapy session. It sometimes sells treats, right? So people just wanted to contact and they want to have a conversation, and maybe that's going to be true with AI agents. They're going to want to just communicate with AI agents, even though it's not a human. But I think for the most part, that the whole way that people communicate with AI agents is going to be very different than how they communicate with humans.
I think from our perspective, maybe like insights from what we're seeing is we're definitely seeing that switch in terms of how people talk to us. There's an expectation of ability, which sometimes is not met by a lot of these experiences that are kind of still in development. But it is interesting because we're seeing loads of people talk to us way differently than they did previously, in the sense of, like long paragraphs saying thank you, things we didn't have previously nearly as much. So I think we're starting, at least on our side, to already see, as I go through logs, this change a little bit. And I think a data point too, I can't remember if it was someone from OpenAI or Anthropic, were saying, they were wasting billions of tokens, per day on people saying thank you to these agents because they were scared of, I don't know, agentic AI apocalypse or something. But nonetheless, I think that is changing. And I think one of the reasons why we were never speaking like a human to these agents is because they couldn't speak like a human back to us. So I think there's an interesting case that it might change in the future. But that's my perspective for now. Let's see how long that holds on. I guess on the empathy perspective, mirroring is actually, from the conversational design perspective, something that is part of our design procedures. So I think in many ways, a lot of the things that we learn and do follow what contact center agents learn. So I'd be curious to learn if there are any other kind of tips, thoughts, tricks in terms of how you teach contact center agents to be better agents. I'm curious if we can maybe find some parallels in our space.
Mirroring obviously is definitely something. There's oftentimes when people are upset and they explain why they're upset, you need to kind of say it back to them and exacerbate the issue so that they really understand that you get it. There's basically just a bunch of different techniques to signal to the other side, like, I'm on your team, we have an issue, if I can solve it, I'm going to solve it for you. We're not enemies, because typically people come in like it's a zero-sum game. You're trying to get something for me, I'm the brand, I don't want to give it to you. And it becomes this, you don't want it to be this negotiation, you want it to be this problem-solving thing that we're both doing together. Now when you start to have agents on both, AI agents on both sides, that's going to be tricky, because that probably ends up becoming a negotiation. If you have an AI agent and I'm an AI agent responding, like empathy is irrelevant. You're going to want a refund or something. You're going to want something, and I'm going to want to probably not give it to you, or I'm going to have an issue giving it to you, some friction giving it to you. And so, what is that going to look like?
Super interesting.
Again, maybe mirroring as an overall umbrella is the right move. If someone comes in cold, you respond cold because maybe it's a bot. There's a lot to learn there. I also think, it's going to get super tricky, because volumes are also going to explode. Everyone's going to have their own consumer AI agents running around doing all kinds of things, buying and returning things and shopping, etc. This whole thing is going to evolve in a very, very unique way over the next, I think, year or two.
I guess even then, we've talked a little bit about what can make conversations better. I'd be curious to understand also what you've learned about what makes conversations go really bad really quickly. If there's any kind of inflection points that almost always results in something horrible. Or maybe it's even a certain domain or a vertical that's just really hard to serve. I'd be curious to hear about your learnings there.
I'd say the number one thing is, again, people want to feel heard. So anything that you do that indicates you're not listening, like if you repeat yourself a lot, if you force the user to explain their issue again, like you didn't get it the first time, that's probably true of a human agent or an AI agent. Obviously you're familiar with folks talking to a chatbot and then getting upset the chatbot doesn't get it. Like the chatbot's not listening, it's not picking it up.
Yep.
People in every domain, they want to feel heard, and they want to feel like the brand is here to solve their problem. So anything that you do that doesn't necessarily do that is probably bad. You want to be problem solving, you want to be thoughtful. Again, my analogy essentially is like the user needs to feel like they're sitting next to the agent, not across the table. Like we're in this together, we're going to solve it together. Anything that you do that doesn't make me feel like that as a user is going to upset me, whether that's a human agent or an AI agent. And so I think, people were hesitant to use AI agents historically because, again, they were rules-based and the outcomes weren't great. But if you can problem solve effectively with AI agents, people will get over it. They'll be willing to deal with a lot if the AI agent can solve their issues.
Super interesting. And I think we're even seeing, like I've seen in the past within the AI agent space, it's been typically just classic customer success. I was recently talking to someone at one of our events who had built a negotiation agent purely for negotiation. I mean, that is extremely open-ended. There are any number of things that could happen in that type of conversation. So I'm really hopeful in terms of like what we'll actually be able to do in a year from now and 2 years from now. On that front, in terms of things going bad, having to repeat yourself, that's something that we're still solving for. Let's say you really do have to make a customer repeat themselves. What's the best way to handle it? We haven't cracked memory entirely. It's something we're working on really, really closely here at Raza, this kind of global contextual memory across all of these different systems. But sometimes you don't have it. How do you fix that problem?
So for humans, it's much easier. You can basically, like Lauren, I'm going to say back to you what I think your issue is, and correct me if I'm wrong. So obviously, I'm being empathetic. I'm trying to be on your side. Let me know if I missed anything. And then I can basically validate that I've understood the issue. So even though I might be forcing you to repeat yourself, there's a good reason for it. If you're an AI agent, it's a little bit more difficult because you should have picked up what Lauren said in the first place. I don't know how comfortable you'd be if the AI agent asked you to repeat yourself again. Like, probably you get away with it, but I don't know that you have as much leeway as you would with a human.
Yeah. Okay. Fair. And I'm curious also when you look across modality. So we're talking voice or IVR and chat, digital, web, WhatsApp, whatever, the many different types of written channels that we have. Are there any trends that you notice that are also important in terms of serving customers differently? Do people who message, agents who message behave much differently than agents who talk on the phone?
I think the users are different.
Interesting.
Typically, younger folks don't want to call. They want digital service. Maybe an older consumer is more comfortable and accustomed to speaking on a voice call. Voice calls are much more expensive. They're much longer. You can only have them one-on-one. So you have to be a certain kind of brand to essentially enable that kind of voice. Probably your high ticket, it's worth it for you to staff your team like that. But increasingly, more and more folks, again, the younger folks want digital. And as people become more accustomed to talking to, like, again, the ChatGPTs and Claudes of the world, they're going to bring that experience to their shopping and to their day-to-day lives as they interact with customer support. They're going to be used to chatting and used to chat responses. I would expect that is going to grow dramatically. And obviously, when you have AI agents, you can do AI agents in voice now too, but probably they're more digital. And so I guess in general, I would expect digital channels, the volume of digital channels to grow exponentially. And voice will continue to shrink, I think, as people have less and less time for that.
Hey, it's super interesting to hear this from an outside perspective because right now I would say voice is exploding in the broader kind of, let's say, agentic AI vendor space probably because of the cost issue. It's so expensive to handle. So any opportunity to automate that is a win, ROI immediately for a lot of organizations. But fair enough. It sounds like, actually, like if you're really looking long game, it might not be the channel of choice for your
What's going to happen today? Like 30% of people say they're willing to let an AI agent complete a purchase for them. So your default would be like let them run around and chat and try to buy something or sell something or whatever. But maybe that channel is hard to get through. So let them. What do I care? I'm a consumer. I'll call you, and that's going to cost you 5 times what a chat would cost. I don't care. But now you have to figure out how to respond to all these voice calls that are being run by AI agents as well. And then it's going to be a matter of like, what are tokens going to cost you versus servicing all of these AI agents that are inbound. It's going to get crazy.
I'd love to dive in kind of last segment for today, really, and look deeper at the future of personalization in conversation. This is something that in chat, we already have loads of data. We're getting loads of data. Our customers are telling us exactly what they want in their own words, which is fantastic. And we're really not leveraging it. And I think over at ContentSquare, as you mentioned earlier on in your intro, you're doing some pretty cool things about learning your consumer behavior and then implementing that back into the user experience. I'd love to hear more.
Sure. So historically, what would happen is we would watch you. Let's say we know that this person, that Lauren, number 123 is on the site doing a certain amount of things, moving their mouse, looking at certain products that are interesting or not interesting, potentially engaging within the app, back and forth. But in between all of these interactions, there are oftentimes support conversations that were never being picked up before. So you would have all this objective data, and you try to derive insights from that. But what if I can then tell you, hey, by the way, in the last 3 weeks, while Lauren was doing all those things, she contacted support 3 times, and here are all the things that she said. You not only understand so much about what you want, what you were looking for, why you got frustrated, why you succeeded in purchasing or failed, but you might be a proxy for another 1,000 people that have the same journey on the website or in the app. You just happen to be the person that interacted with support, so you're the one who gave us all those golden nuggets that now inform how the journeys of all these other people went. So just imagine from a brand standpoint, having all of that data combined, it's never existed before. If you want to as a brand, you will be able to customize your entire experience for every single user. It's incredible.
And this is pretty cool for us as well on the agent side, because when we go to automate a service, what will happen in the future, and this is really quite literally we're like on the ground building this right now, is being able to pull in all of that data and then inject it at the right moment into the conversation and allow a language model to flexibly use it. In the past, we couldn't be flexible, right? We had to have that information in and then deterministically operate on behalf of it. But now, with memory, once we have this kind of global memory layer that we're able to activate and leverage, I think these systems are going to be so much smarter than they were previously, and that's pretty neat. So I'd be curious, when you talk about behavioral signals that happen, and I think this is something we are all going to need to learn in the future as we go to serve customers with conversational interfaces. What are some of the behavioral keys that you've seen in the past? I know you've mentioned, for example, rage clicking or cart confusion. These are all new words for anyone that's coming from my background.
So when someone hits a site, there's certain things. Some people, like, just imagine it. I guess the easiest way for me to explain it is imagine an in-store experience. Some people, they walk in, they know what they want, they're buying it, they want to get out as fast as possible. Some people want to browse. They want to hang out. They have an affinity for the brand. They want to stay in the store. They want to see what's new. They want to talk to someone to explain more about it. So people have kind of a different journey depending on what they're looking for. And you can get some of those signals, you can get a lot of those signals online by watching what they're doing within the site. Are they actually trying to get something, but they're unable to, and they're rage clicking because they can't figure out how to do it? Are they navigating to different pages? Are they looking at certain products and then other products that are similar? Like, there's a lot of things that you can pick up from the digital experience. But again, if you can marry that with the conversations on the support side, that kind of lights up all those interactions to a different level where you really have a better understanding. We haven't even spoken about the fact that commerce now is going to become conversational. You're going to stop using your finger and dragging it. You're going to be typing. You're going to be chatting into brands on their websites. You're going to have like a ChatGPT-like experience on most brand sites. So that conversation is going to be much richer than it's been historically, and a brand will have even more data to understand how people behave on the site, what they're looking to achieve, and not everyone wants the exact same thing. So do you want to treat different customers differently? And then back to what we said earlier, if you got to the point when you had an LTV ascribed to every single interaction, I know that Lauren is really valuable. I can spend an hour on the phone with her because she spends a lot of money with me. Someone else is never going to buy. They come in and out, and I can't waste hours on the phone with this person, or they're sending their AI agents at me. Right.
I'm curious what this means for brands, because you have the broad overarching perspective on this. So one of the things that we're seeing as kind of a net new use case that people are starting to want to do is exactly what you described, this kind of product search use case, something that we really couldn't do well, was very deterministic, kind of like retrieve, rank, show the different products. There's probably a lot of opportunity there from a business perspective to optimize that, to make that better, to get the most out of it. What is that, what are the opportunities there for businesses in this kind of conversational product search, product recommendation experience?
It's like a whole new science. I mean, if you assume someone's just coming in, they're looking for a widget and they want to get out, then you have to be really good at serving up the widget as fast and seamlessly as possible. But most folks are going to say, well, if you're looking at this, maybe you want to look at other things. Maybe you want to add more things to your cart. Maybe I want to do certain things to strengthen my relationship with the brand and the user within that conversation. There's so many different things. Again, analogize it to an in-store experience. There's a lot of things that you could do. You could let someone run around by themselves and never talk to them. You can offer to help. You can ask them if they want to look at similar products. That's going to be pretty analogous to what you're going to find online soon, when folks have a better understanding of what people are looking for. How much patience do they have? How much are they willing to stay on a website or in an app to interact? All of it's going to change.
I guess are there any other key behavioral signals? Are there any other key behavioral signals that you've noticed? So, for example, like rage clicking. I'm assuming this is just someone that's clicked really fast. Maybe I've done it. I'm not even sure if I have. I've never heard of it before. What are some of the other like clickable, readable signals that you get from users as they're moving about on a web page?
You have journey maps. So we were able to basically track where someone comes in and how they leave. And if the end game is for you to buy this item, there's a certain journey that might take typically. And if you fall, maybe something's wrong in the site and the app experience where it breaks, where you're looking for something but you can't find it, and then you're running around and you're getting diverted to other pages. So there's something that tells us about the experience that you're having from the digital side that we should improve to make it easier for you to find the thing you're looking for and get out. There are a variety of different things that we can observe online with all of these different data points. To understand if the outcome is what we're looking for.
I guess so. I think you made a good point there. We've talked a lot about personalization, but actually optimization is the other side of this. How can you optimize your experience? What's some of the things that you've learned from conversations that have helped you optimize experiences elsewhere?
I mean, the easiest use case is people are coming in, they want to buy something, let's make it easy for them to do that. Or they want to return something, let's make it easy for them to do that. So how do we make that journey the shortest path between 2 points as opposed to them running around and trying to figure it out? But it's super nuanced. I mean, there's a lot of companies, for example, that have a support team that make it really hard for you to cancel your subscription or return an item. That's part of their way of doing business. Other people want customer service to be really, really excellent, and they want to make it super easy for you to get the thing that you're looking for. Same is true on the conversion side. Some brands want you to hang out. I want you to spend more time. I want you to have an affinity for the brand. Maybe I don't want you to find the exact thing that you're looking for right away and get out. I want to show you other things along the way. So it really depends on what the brand is solving for. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of things that go into that. Is your demographic young or old? Are they online or not? Everyone's got their own flavor of how they interact with their customers.
That actually gives me another question, which I think we haven't covered today, which is interesting because here at Raza, we serve actually quite a wide variety of geographies, languages also. That's one of the things the Raza framework is really good at, is really serving different languages well. So I'd be curious to learn from even like a cultural perspective. I live in Germany today, originally born in America, so I know there's loads of different cultural perspectives in how I interact with people today here in Germany than I would in California. Nonetheless, I'd be curious, what have you learned from these conversations? What element does culture, does language, does age, demographics have? And what are some of the key things, quick fixes you can make to make these experiences better if you do know a little bit about the person?
So when we started, essentially our job was to help agents around the world interact with the U.S. clientele. And they had studied, a lot of them have gotten training in terms of how do you interact with an American audience. So a lot of the suggestions and things that we would do to help them, they were all kind of in the same vein. Now we've added additional languages. Now ContentSquare is totally worldwide. And so that's a little bit new for us. Now we have to go expand in terms of our understanding of different cultures. The language part's not that, it's basically a solved problem. The cultural part online is not difficult, but in conversations, it's more nuanced. So I would say that we're still learning that piece of it.
Okay, super interesting. Yeah, would love to hear your learnings as they come up in the next years for sure, because I think that's something we're seeing also internally. We've got, sometimes what's happening now with language models is the center of excellence teams will pop up, and as you said, translation is in many ways a bit of a solved problem here. So it makes it easy for, a team in one country to serve 10 teams in other countries. So it's an interesting case where you have one team that might not have the cultural awareness of all of these other countries. How do you actually design for that? And I think that's an interesting case for all those conversation designers listening in, for you to be involved, obviously, because having these local opinions, local identities, local understanding, I think is still massively important. But I think through data, we're probably going to learn a lot about ourselves as well. And I guess that'll be maybe one of my closing questions. I guess, what have you learned about humanity so far? A bit of a broader question after watching all of these different conversations back and forth. Any key learnings that you've had that actually surprised you over the years?
About humanity in general?
Sure. People talking.
I think people that interact, I think people are generally very nice and well-intentioned, even if they're frustrated in the moment. So if they can see the other person on the other line as a human like themselves, then the whole interaction is different. It's much more respectful. I don't think that I would have expected that at the beginning. I would think that people would just interact with a support agent and just, I need you to fix this for me, do it quickly and whatever, and let me get out of here. People not only kind of appreciate the human aspect, a lot of people need that. We saw that a lot in COVID, for example. People were alone, oftentimes not interacting with anybody else. They just wanted someone to talk to. They needed the human connection, and literally a lot of customer support volume was just people trying to talk to other people. So that aspect of it was really lovely. And so I guess what I'm more interested and concerned about now with the proliferation of AI agents, when they're all running around and you're not going to even know if you're talking to an agent or a human, what is that going to mean for humanity and society? Are we all going to become colder and more apathetic? I hope not, but it's definitely possible. It's certainly a concern. And you probably will kind of see the seeds of how humans engage with other humans changing in our world, because there's just so much volume and so many conversations and so many interactions tracked. We're going to learn a lot about like the evolution of human interaction, like just from our day-to-day jobs, I think. So I'm hoping for the best, but I don't know what's going to happen.
Amazing. Thank you so much for joining today. It's been an absolute pleasure to talk with you. I think there's probably, 1,000 different conversation designers that would love to hear your insights about real human conversations, because ultimately at the end of the day, that's exactly what we're trying to do here. Have slightly more human conversations than we currently have with machines. So thank you so much. Appreciate your insights and wish you all the best, and can't wait to hear about your learnings in the years to come.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me.